Welcome everyone to Inspiring Environmental Good Through Games, an event hosted here virtually by the Wilson Center. The Wilson Center, chartered by Congress in 1968 as the official memorial to President Woodrow Wilson, is the nation's key nonpartisan policy forum for tackling global issues through independent research and open dialogue. This event is hosted by 4 programs at the Wilson Center. First, the Serious Games Initiative, directed by myself, the China Environment Forum, led by my colleague, Dr. Jennifer Turner, the Environmental Change and Security Program, led by Lauren H. Rizzi, and the Science and Technology Program, led by Meg King. And if you're keeping count, that is 4 incredible women leading those programs. My name is Elizabeth Newberry, and I'm the director of the Serious Games Initiative and the deputy director of the Science and Technology Innovation Program. My colleagues refer to me as Dr. Games, mostly because it turns out that playing World of Warcraft and League of Legends can be part of your doctoral research. And I turned that into a career here. Coincidentally, this also turns me into the cool aunt because I can explain to my brothers that the games that their kids are playing do actually have educational purposes like Pokemon Go and Minecraft. But for many people, especially in the DC area, my title may seem a little bit odd as it uses the term serious games, a term coincidentally coined here in the context of the digital age by the Wilson Center. But serious games does seem a little bit oxymoronic. It's a term that we use to help distinguish games that are being used for positive impacts. And they kind of come in 2 different flavors. One, games can be designed for the purpose of other than entertainment. So they can be designed for good, for impact, for education. But also you can turn commercial games that are already in existence into uses that are also socially positive. And we'll see a little bit of both today. Another question I always get when I introduce myself and programs here is, why would you use games for policy research or policy education? Well, the first is, people are playing games. According to the Entertainment Software Association, in 2021, there are an estimated 227 million Americans who play video games. Many of them are playing it for positive reasons, such as mental stimulation, finding inspiration, social connection, which is incredibly important in the pandemic, and relieving stress, also important in the pandemic. Decades of research has demonstrated the positive impacts of games, whether that be for psychological or sociological reasons. And players are really, really gravitating towards games as a form of connection and social good. Why are games so effective at these positive outcomes? And one of the things that we use games for is, in contrast to potentially reading a 25-page policy brief, games are fun. Not that I don't enjoy reading policy briefs, I definitely do, but games are fun. And that's one of the reasons why people are motivated to play them, one of the reasons why they're really exciting to use. This fun and the power of games is that they are a powerful communication tool, in part because of their interactivity. They really put the power in the hands of users. They can make us heroes, and they can also encourage us to keep going and learning when we might normally stop. In some cases, they can also help us learn better than reading an article, and in many more, they motivate us to dive into topics we may not otherwise feel excited to learn about. For me, that was math. I used math blasters when I was growing up, and it definitely maybe launched my career, if you will. For environmental issues, games are often used to make really complex systems, such as ocean plastic pollution, climate change, accessible, or to put the worlds that we may not otherwise experience, remote worlds like the oceans that we're going to be diving into today, or other regions of the world, at our fingertips. A growing number of environmental groups and researchers are using games to engage audiences in environmental education and other sorts of environmental efforts. Here at the Wilson Center, the Serious Games Initiative, China Environment Forum, have teamed up with Fable Vision Studios to develop a game that's in the prototypal stage, so we can't show it to you today, but it's called The Plastic Pipeline. It's funded in part by the National Geographic Society and the Luce Foundation. And the goal of this game is to gather all of this research that my brilliant colleague Jennifer Turner is turning out and transform it into a game and an interactive experience, something really exciting and fun and accessible, but one that also puts policy at the fingertips of players. While we make this research come to life in a nonpartisan game, we're trying to challenge players to really investigate the life cycle of a plastic product from production, where there's a lot of choices that go in, to waste, which again, Jennifer Turner would be more than happy to tell you more about that. And you can actually read some of her research if you go to wilsoncenter.org/plastic/pipeline or Google China Environment Forum. Coincidentally, this is the last plug I'll make, but if you are an educator or a decision leader and want to be involved in that process, we would love to hear from you, and I'll put my email in the chat. This is only one way. While we tend to focus on policy and making policy accessible, this is only one way to use games, and especially in the environmental arena, there's so many different ways that we can really leverage this unique medium for good. So we're going to dive into some of the world of this possibilities here today. First, we're going to hear from colleagues with the Indonesia Plastic Bag Diet, who created an AR game prototype to help educate their community about the state of plastic pollution and how it enters the ocean. Now it's 6 a.m. in Indonesia, so they're not going to be live. We'll be enjoying a pre-recorded video, but it's still very exciting to learn about. Then we'll switch over to a live panel discussion with Alan Gershenfeld, president and co-founder of Eli Media, and Jenny Solheim, director of social impact at Niantic Labs, the creators of Pokemon Go. Alan will be telling us a little bit more about Beyond Blue, a new game about the oceans, using research from leading scientists, and also collaborating with BBC Studios on that. And then we'll also be hearing from Jenny about some of the ways that they've leveraged Pokemon Go and some of their other games to really get people out and moving and acting in their communities around environmental change. Thank you again so much for joining us. And as the panel moves along, please feel free to put questions below in the chat. I will be monitoring it. You can also find us on Twitter at WilsonStip, that's STIP, and I'll be monitoring that as well. And I'm really excited that you're here with us today. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to a video with Jennifer.
All right. Thank you so much. It was a crack of too early in the morning when we were doing this meeting for Indonesia. So I recorded a quick talk with them. So I will be quiet and I will play this video for y'all, and I will make it big. Hello there, my name is Jennifer Turner. I direct the China Environment Forum at the Wilson Center. And just about a year ago, I was able to host Tiza Mafira, who is the founder of, okay. I don't know why I did that. I'm so sorry. I just been playing it all night. Hold on. Sorry, Liz, do you want to say something while I fix this up again?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So this is technology. We've tested this before and it just so happens. Again, please put your comments in the chat. We already have one and I'll be monitoring it as we go along. Do you want to give it another go, Jennifer? Why don't you ask that question and let me just test it offline one more time. So the current question is, would these games, or the current version of these games be used by the military to project or assess potential conflicts? I don't want to speak necessarily for the other two panelists, and obviously Tiza is not here, but I'm confident that there are a lot of different war games that are being used for training purposes. There's one that's especially called Aftermath that I'm aware of that is used for natural disaster training. But I'd be happy to connect offline about that if you're looking for more concrete examples. Okay, we'll try it again. See if it's, I don't know why I played it several times today. Mr. Technology, well, all right. All right, try this again. I direct the China Environment Forum at the Wilson Center. And just about a year ago, I was able to host Tiza Mafira, who is the founder of the Indonesian Plastic Bag Diet. She gave a great talk last year. And after the talk, I found out that her NGO had created an educational game.
And since my project is also working with Elizabeth Newberry on creating a plastic educational game, I thought it'd be really great to pull them in to our meeting today. We had to record it because it's really, really early in Indonesia at this real time that we're doing it. So I'm going to jump in and invite Tiza. Tell us a little bit about why did Plastic Bag Diet decide to make a plastic game?
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. Well, the Plastic Bag Diet has a really cool program that's all about educating high school students. And the way that we do it is that we figured education, it never works when it's completely top down, when we're just telling them, this is the problem, this is the solution. We thought it would be much more engaging and effective if the students came up with the solutions by themselves, by fully understanding and discovering the problem by themselves. So we thought that, well, it would be fun if we turn this into a game. So we wanted to create a fun way to make the high school students aware about the plastic pollution without just giving them a lecture about it, So we created this augmented reality game, which is obviously it's interactive, it's fun, and the kids love techie stuff. And throughout this game, they're kind of discovering what happens with plastic, from the moment that it's created from the upstream to the moment that it's disposed downstream. And then they fully kind of immerse themselves in this augmented reality world around plastics, after which then we ask them, let's create a solution for these problems.
Cool. Well, that's a great intro. And I think that Rayang, I know that you really lead the charge on this game. Could you share your screen and maybe tell us briefly about tell us a little bit more about what the game is?
Thank you, Jennifer. So it's a simple augmented reality games to raise awareness of the high school students that we want to motivate them to make them understand that the plastic pollutions is a systemic problem. It started since the raw material extracting. We still use the fossil fuel to make a plastics. And the pollutions, the problems, it occurs since the extraction to the disposal. So we want to make them understand the supply chains, the value chains of the plastic pollutions, and to invite them, to motivate them how they can start to create an action plan from these complex problems. And we want to also facilitate them through this augmented reality app about the fact about how the schools can also can start the journey on the plastic pollutions problems.
Yeah, and so how did you implement and roll it out? I mean, because it's just in a pilot stage right now, right?
Yes, we have our educational programs called Enviro Challenge. It started in 2016, and the augmented reality app we first introduced to them in 2019, and it's the first schools programs that we use the augmented reality app, and we put this in our first phase of the educational part, because the Enviro Challenge has a 6-month programs to facilitate the student movement in their schools to create a plastic action plan, the plastic reduction action plan. And during the first phase of the educational programs, we use this augmented reality app to help them to analyze the problems and how their schools also contribute to the plastic pollutions. And then after this first phase, we facilitate them the discussions to create an action plan on how their schools also can contribute to the solutions of the problem.
That's really amazing. And did you just try it in one school, or were there multiple high schools?
Multiple high schools. I think at that time we have 10 schools in Jakarta and 10 schools in Bandung, my hometown. So we have total 20 schools.
I've been to your hometown many years ago. It's a beautiful city. Well,
Thank you.
so here's a question that, and both Rayang and Tiza could jump in here. What was some of the impacts that you've seen from the game in this pilot? Maybe Rayang, do you want to start?
Yes, the impact is based on our evaluation of the programs. We heard that many of the students found out that the app helped them to understand about the plastic pollution problems. They never experienced it before because in schools, the teachers don't use games, of course, to talk about these things. And then we came out with these things and they have smartphones, so we want to maximize the smartphones, not only for the use for the social media, but we want them to also maximize their smartphone use to create something benefit for the environment. So we want so we in the future we want these apps to be public, not only can be used in schools programs, but also everyone can use it. And I think that the app is easy to use and in Bahasa Indonesia, of course, to make them understand about about the pollution. And then we also have a point that showed solutions on how individuals can also contribute to reduce the plastic pollution.
And so this was kind of a one-off. Were the teachers and the schools open to making this part of a curriculum, like for I don't know, for STEM or for civics? Tiza?
Yeah,
Yes.
well, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. So we are planning on it, and Tiza will explain further about that.
Yeah, well, we definitely involved the teachers as well. In every step of the way, we showed them what this looked like for the students and how they were experiencing it. We definitely felt that because the goal was to get the students to create a program in their own school to reduce trash in their own school, the game helped to really internalize that mission better than if we just said, here's the mission, go do it, And so they were able to come up with the most amazing, innovative programs that even we didn't think of. So really? This is exactly the goal. So for the future, we're hoping that we're currently talking to the Ministry of Education around a curriculum for waste, right? A curriculum around waste solutions. And we don't want the curriculum to, of course, focus on recycling only, right? That doesn't really highlight the scale of the issue. So we're hoping that the approach around this game that is interactive and engaging the students and empowering them to come up with the solutions themselves, we're hoping that will be, part of the method, at least, of teaching the curriculum. Let's see what happens.
And with the plans, did the schools implement the plan, and did they end up getting zero waste plastic or reduce the amount of plastic? Give us a story real quick.
So one of the schools said, we'll reduce all of the plastic bottles in our school 100%. That was their stated goal, and they did it. Wow. They did it by placing a water dispenser in every classroom. It was a very cheap solution. And within a month, all the plastic bottles were gone.
But that's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's something that, we would think, kind of complicated solutions maybe, but they came up with the most, it was culturally appropriate for their school. It was something that the teachers could accept. And it ultimately worked and is still being, conducted at the moment in that school. It's still being implemented because it's so effective. Yeah, that's one story I like to tell. Yeah.
Ryan, do you have any other story about an impact story or someone who you were impressed with after you did the game?
Yes, one of the biggest impact is from the schools that Tiza mentions before. We gave birth to a new activist. They are now advocating they have petitions to call out the producers who produce the single-use water gallons. So they see that it jeopardizes their initiatives. So they want to keep their initiatives alive in their schools, and then they call out the producers. They have petitions. We have like 50,000 supporters in the petitions, and it's amazing that the programs can be this big, and we want to create more young leaders from these programs.
Well, I want to thank both of you because this was an absolutely perfect example of how games can inspire environmental good. And if anyone has questions for Tiza and Rayang, you can email the Liz or me, and we will ferry those questions over and get back to you. Thank you so much, you two, and have a really good morning in Indonesia. And I'll have a good night in DC. Have a good night. Okay, that was my conversation with Tiza. So I will step away and let Alan and Yenny talk, but they're a very aspiring group, and they're gonna take this. It's gonna be like wildfire across Indonesia, this game, I bet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that. And now we're gonna tee up for the live panel presentation. Again, if you have any questions for what we just saw, you may email Jennifer or myself, and we are happy to Sherpa or ferry or pick your transportation of choice to them. But now we're gonna dive into Beyond Blue, and we're gonna start with a quick trailer.
Welcome to the Western Pacific. I'm Dr. Mirai Soto, and I'll be your eyes and ears on this expedition. I'm joined today by two colleagues.
Hello, I'm Andre.
And I'm Irina.
First time on a live stream. Be gentle with her. Oh, wow. Glad we didn't miss this.
Beautiful. Why are you so focused on this pod and the baby?
I'm hoping to follow the baby for years, to learn from her as she learns from her family.
Hello, Mariah. Thanks for checking in. Feeling settled in the sun? Is everything tested out?
Fabulous. The overhead speakers sound great. Glad I brought my tunes.
Science is not magic, it takes patience.
I'd like to believe in a little magic. Irina, did you expect volcanic activity here? Andre, who is messing with my whales?
And now we will hear from Alan himself about the game.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm a big fan of the Woodrow Wilson Center. Before Eli, I was chairman of a nonprofit called Games for Change that really came out of a white paper from the Woodrow Wilson Institute. So they've been a real inspiration, and I'm a big fan of Niantic. I'm a Pokemon Go player. So it's great to be on this panel. So Eli Media is a developer and publisher of games, commercial games that have a positive social impact. We want to bring diverse cultures to the game. We're probably to the medium. We're probably best known for an Alaska Native game we called Never Alone that we developed with an Alaska Native tribe, where we've had over 10 million downloads. We want to explore the awe and wonder of the planet through environmental games, and we want to explore the big issues facing society through games. One of the things we did on Never Alone that we also did on Beyond Blue was, although the game was a puzzle platform game, we unlocked short documentaries, in the case of Never Alone about the Alaska Native community, and in the case of Beyond Blue, the scientists who inspired the game. And this mix of modalities is very interesting in terms of interactive, lean forward gameplay, which I'll talk about in a second, but also real world documentaries, which gamers might not watch on public television or a Netflix. And in fact, BBC contacted us because they liked the mix of gameplay and documentaries and asked us to do a game extension to their Ocean franchise. Taking a step back, Elizabeth touched on this, but going a little bit deeper, games are interactive. They let you take on a role and identity. You have agency, and that's crucial. You have agency to do things, and those things are verbs. Games are built around verbs. They might be action verbs, they might be thinking verbs. So you have agency and you can act towards a goal that you're invested in. It might be a goal that you're individually invested in, a small group, or the entire community is invested in. And then crucially, and a lot of people miss this, you can fail evocatively and safely, but then you get feedback. You get feedback from the game. You get feedback from peers. You get feedback from mentors to improve whatever you're trying to do towards a goal that you're invested in. If you think about that, that's not only highly engaging, billions of hours of lean forward entertainment, but it's essentially project and inquiry-based learning and behavior change. So it is a very, very powerful medium. And it can be applied towards all sorts of different theories of change towards real world impact. And we can unpack those. In the case of our games, when we do a game like with the Alaska Native Tribal Organization, we didn't make a game about them, we made a game with them. We took the same philosophy with the scientists, the marine scientists that we worked with in Beyond Blue. It was absolutely amazing to get to work with people like Dr. Sylvia Earle, Dr. Mandy Joy, Dr. David Gruber. And if you don't know these people, Google them and it'll blow you away. These folks are aquanauts. They are doing the cutting edge science and they're exploring the frontier on this earth where new species are discovered almost daily in dives from a microscopic level all the way up to large creatures. They're getting close to first contact, understanding the language of animals and communication. There's amazing work being done on that front. The way we see, hear, and explore the ocean, the idea of an ocean DNA and understanding the rhythm of it is amazing. And the implications both for the health of the planet are well documented. But for a lot of people, the ocean is scary, it's dark, it's not as sexy as space. And so you don't see the same number of ocean exploration media projects as you do space projects. And so we really wanted to lean in and explore the awe and wonder of the ocean as a way to get people engaged and to become better stewards of the ocean. And everything we did was inspired and anchored by real science or where real science could go, asking the scientists, in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, what's an aspirational but achievable future that you could imagine? How do you go deeper, stay longer, hear, understand the ocean better? Because in a game, we can build these aspirational but achievable futures. And then crucially, we can rewind and say, what are the stable steps to getting there? So as we build out on this game, and we're going to bring it to VR, we're going to bring it to social mobile, we're going to bring it to other platforms and build more content, we're looking as to how we can take those same attributes and bring it into the real world. So if you see a future ocean ecosystem and a restoration ecosystem, how can you start to do that in the real world? And there's amazing technologies for 3D printed coral restoration, all sorts of different restoration technologies, where if you do it in the game, we give you an opportunity with vetted partners to do it in the real world. And crucially, it's not a one-time activity. You keep getting a feedback loop that you're making a difference. And I think that idea of a game as a service, both in the virtual and real world, which again, Niantic does amazingly, I think has the opportunity to fundamentally change the world. So I'll pause there.
Wonderful. And we'll do question and answer after both panelists have had an opportunity to give their opening remarks, I suppose, although we're not doing parliamentary procedure here. Yenny is the Director of Social Impact at Niantic. And so I will pass pass the baton over to her for her presentation.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. I'm going to share my screen here. Anyone can just wave at me if they can't see it. Otherwise, I'll keep going. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored and excited to be here amongst the panelists and the hosts and all of you attendees. So thank you for spending your evening or morning or afternoon with me. So first, I'll take a step back and explain a little bit about who Niantic is and why we're a part of this. So I have been at Niantic about 10 and a half years, and Niantic actually started as an experimental unit within Google. We were founded by John Hankey, who is still our CEO, and we specifically were focused on creating augmented reality or AR games that encourage people to explore the world outside together, which at the time, back in 2011, 2012, I don't think most people thought that that was going to be a thing. But we launched a couple of games while we were at Google, including Field Trip and Ingress, which helped us prove out this point that people do, in fact, go outside to play games. And we got a lot of feedback from the Ingress players in particular that when they go outside to play our games, really positive things happened. They started walking more, they started exploring their communities, they maybe met other Ingress players who then became friends or family. And that was really kind of the beginning point for us when we started to think about how can we make a positive impact using AR. And then in 2015, we spun out from Google, became an independent company, raised our own funding. And then just under a year later, we launched what most people know of as Pokemon Go, which to our surprise was much more popular than we had expected or anticipated. But what Pokemon Go did for the technology world and the gaming world in general is that it showed and proved out this larger point that yes, people will go outside in order to play games. And so when people think about AR, they might think about Pokemon Go, but there's actually a whole range of applications for AR that are beyond seeing a Pikachu on your front yard. So in 2017, we were inspired to start our social impact element at the company. And my team really exists to amplify all of the positive impact that we believe our products, our games, and now our platform, which enables third-party developers to create their own AR experiences to really create an impact. So let's talk a little bit about what social impact looks like at Niantic. It's a little bit different than I would say a lot of other tech company, classic CSR or corporate social responsibility programs, in that we are actively asking our players who are located around the world to take action. This is actually a picture from our annual sustainability campaign that we run every April. And these are two players who were working alongside a local nonprofit to help clean up their beaches. So there are kind of two main components to our work. And the first is to engage these players. Like I mentioned, we have players all around the world. And what's really unique and interesting about that is that these players physically have to move outside in order to play our games. So they have to, for example, walk to a cultural location, so a mural or sculpture or fountain, in order to engage with that game. And over time, we've developed partnerships with lots of local nonprofits, specifically focused on sustainability and combating climate change. The images that you see here on the right are from the sustainability campaign that we run every year. And the map is a map of all of the locations where our players have attended local cleanup events or sustainability programs. And then in exchange for them attending and interacting with the local nonprofits, we release in-game rewards to the players, which for any of you who are gamers, that's a big deal and a lot of fun. And it's exciting. So we do that across all of our live games all at once, so that it is a big collaborative Niantic effort. In addition, we've started using some of our resources within our games to directly support specific initiatives at organizations like the National Park Foundation. So this last year, we utilized a function within Pokemon Go to help advertise and educate players about National Parks Week, which again happens in April. And specifically, we don't have advertisements in our games, but we do use specific engagements to kind of help nudge people along to learn various things about sustainability, mental health, education. And so we used a new functionality in Pokemon Go to advertise National Parks Week. And what we did is we focused the campaign in 5 cities across the US, where the foundation specifically wanted to focus engaging potentially new attendees. And we did this over 7 days. If a player kind of clicked through on what they saw in game, they would learn more about National Parks Week, as well as the local rivers and trails in their community, not just Yosemite, but their local communities. And then they had an opportunity to donate to the foundation if they wanted to, which Niantic matched. Well, the results were really successful. We actually blew through the cap that we had on the matching campaign in 7 days. And it turns out that 92% of the donors through this campaign were brand new to the National Park Foundation. So that was a really significant learning for us in that we were connecting new donors, new people, and folks who the National Park Foundation hadn't previously engaged with. The second piece to our work is really amplifying. So because we have millions of players all around the world, engaging in their communities, talking with one another, we think it's part of our responsibility to align with various like-minded groups and players to kind of amplify the need for sustainable efforts. Obviously, we have social media, lots of different player forums. These 2 images on the right are of players and their favorite Pokemon cleaning up trash in their communities. And then the lower image here on the left is a Pokemon Go avatar. And it's a little hard to see in this image, but the avatar is wearing a sustainability shirt that we launched in Pokemon Go. It was worn by millions of players, and it was a way for players to signal their support of combating climate change. And then lastly, we're a part of a really interesting organization called Playing for the Planet, which is run by the UN. It's a consortium of various tech and gaming companies who are working together to combat climate change and to commit to sustainable action. Some of the things that organizations do there is figure out ways in which they can commit to being carbon neutral. There is a green game jam every year in which game companies implement sustainability efforts in game. And then there are also some really interesting behavioral analysis happening that Niantic's a part of. And what we're doing is we're trying to utilize in-game messaging and communication to better understand how players feel about sustainability and whether or not our efforts and features within games like Pokemon Go actually influence their behavior and thought patterns around sustainability and taking action on sustainability. So that's my whirlwind tour of Niantic. We're a pretty unique organization, and I'm really excited to dig into questions.
Great, thank you both so much. So I think now we are going to shift over to the question and answer period. If you are watching, then please feel free to, again, put some questions in the chat. I'm going to take executive privilege here as the moderator to start with the first question. And one of those is, when we think about games, one of the things, especially in the environmental space, we're thinking about is what the impact of playing the game is going to be. We sort of know how in other communication mediums what the impact is going to be if we run an ad campaign or if we put out a petition or something along those lines. So what are some of the ways that you're seeing impact from as a result of either engaging in the game in the virtual world of diving into the oceans, or the impact of going around and encouraging players to really interact with community and space? Are there any longitudinal impacts? Are there any short-term impacts? And Yenny, do you mind if I put you on the spot as the first person to respond?
Sure, yeah. So what we're really interested in is trying to connect players who are community members to local organizations, national organizations, and community events. So we have a lot of live events, which mean literally in-person, safe events in which people can gather together and talk about different things via the game. So what we have noticed is that it is much easier to talk about things like sustainability and environmental protection if it's in a game. So people are already kind of relaxed and curious about Pokemon, let's say, and they're meeting with other folks who also like Pokemon. And then if we can kind of include them in a cleanup event, let's say at a local park where we're hosting an event, they might be able to bond over the original like-mindedness on Pokemon, but then they start to feel connected to their local park because they're there with their fellow players and community members. They're talking to the local nonprofit, and they're making the connection between the game and their local community. So we see this a lot in our cleanup events. We also see it at some of our like very large gaming events. We've got something called Pokemon Go Fest, which is a big geekathon that we have most years, although not during COVID. And we actually get letters and emails from players all the time, kind of explaining the impact of the games, which, you know, I think all of us could assume that, oh, it's just a game. It's, you know, it's something fun to do. But we have seen that when people go outside and engage with one another, they feel more included, and then they're more likely to take action on things like sustainability and environmentalism.
So to build on that, there's different theories of change that we explore in each of our games. Because we're also playing in the commercial game space, our games have to be fun, where a lot of people come because they're playing a fun game. They didn't necessarily wake up and say, I want to learn about the Alaska Native community, or I want to explore the ocean or deep sea mining, but they came to it because it's a game, and it introduced a world and a concept that they may not have been aware of in a deeply immersive way. And, you know, to judge the impact is often qualitative there. It's tricky. It's kind of like judging the impact of a movie. There's a number of mechanisms that we can do through tracking social media, through interviews, to see if we've introduced and engaged somebody in a topic that they were not previously interested in. Then there are opportunities for people who are already interested to go deeper in a particular area through the game or through a connection with one of our nonprofit or science partners with a citizen science module or other engagement modules. There are other impact. In fact, one of our impact funders was particularly interested in the research. If you're familiar with the actress Gina Davis, she has a great research arm where she studies gender identity in popular media. And it's amazing, the research that's come out of TV and film, that if you see a CSI strong female protagonist, it's incredible how many young women want to pursue that as a career path. And the numbers are remarkable, because you enter these fantasies, you see these roles, and they're starting to move into games. So we have a very strong female scientist, and in our unlockable video insights, you meet the real world female scientists. And we're tracking young girls who are now interested in marine science as a potential career. It's hard to do that fully. It costs a lot to do that type of research. So like I say, it's a little more qualitative. As we move forward, much like Niantic is doing, we are going to fold more real world citizen science, more real world engagement loops, where it'll be a little bit more objective, the impact measurements that we can track. So it's a blend of, it's a blend of qualitative and quantitative impact. But all of our funders are impact funders. And at the very beginning of a project, we sit down and say, what are our commercial goals? What are our impact goals? And how do we build systems where we can just get better and better at them?
I really appreciate that you brought it back to that motivation question. Not only we oftentimes, and especially in games, we are conceptualizing like getting people to dive into a topic that they haven't necessarily already engaged with. but also a lot of what we do is developing games for those who are already sort of interested in oceans or some element of the game, whether it's Pikachu luring them into a little bit of cleanup in their local community, or whether it's, you know what, I'm really like whales and I might dive into this and learn a little bit more deeply about that. There's both these sort of capacities where you can never before have experienced it and then also replay or even dive deeper. And there's a lot of research that shows that this sort of mixed capacity is something that games really have a long stretch on. One of the other things I wanted to circle back to, and it's a question I always get that you mentioned, is this idea of fun, Alan. Almost every time I present about games, one of the first questions for those who are like, yes, I'm sold, I would love to make a game. How do I do fun? How do I make something fun? How do I make sure that people are having a fun experience? What sort of, because especially in the policy space, we're not always thinking about how do I make a video documentary or how do I make a policy brief fun? So not to give you a very loaded question, but you have so much experience with fun and engaging in educational games. How do you consider that when you're developing these?
Well, I think first it's important to understand this is a craft, not a commodity. Just because it's a game doesn't mean it's going to be fun, educational, or impactful. This is a complex craft and talent matters. I mean, I used to run a very large commercial game studio, and the folks that really can create the magic, the creative directors, art directors, lead programmers, the teams that come together and create magic. It's not unlike creating amazing movies, amazing novels. It's a creative medium mediated by technology that is complex and fast moving. So, first and foremost, we look for talent. It might be emerging young talent somewhere in the world. It might be extreme, people who've had huge hitch behind them, but want to do something more impactful and have an inspired vision with an organic alignment of the impact goals. And then we support that team, find the capital, make sure it's effectively put out there. But make no mistake, the fun comes from folks that understand the core game loops, the core motivation loops, what keeps people engaged, what is the goal that they are invested in, what are the capabilities that they need, what is that proximal skill set of, oh, it's just challenging enough that I really want to do it, I failed, that was really fun, but I want to try it again, here's how I'm getting the feedback. Ideally that's done collectively. That's an art form, it's a craft. And if you're doing consumer stuff, you're replacing somebody's discretionary time, and that bar is high, especially with young people and all their choices. If you want to get into schools, you're replacing time or money somewhere. It's a different mindset in terms of how you replace time or money in schools, because you're also reducing friction for the teachers, you're aligning with other things. But make no mistake, you're replacing somebody's time and or money somewhere, and the bar is quite high. And again, you can break down finding people who have platform experience, genre experience. When you get into it, there's ways to reduce risk to get to that fun.
Great. And I see we have a bunch of questions from the chat. So Yenny, do you mind if I just jump to that really quick?
Sure. Yep.
Great. So one of the things that we have a question on that I would love for you both to address this is from Michael McCormick, who's a game designer. What are some of the challenges, struggles, problems that you've encountered in trying to engage players in sustainability?
Can I go first?
Yes, you're unmuted. You get to go first.
Oh, no, I was going to suggest Yenny go first.
Okay. Yenny, would you like to take that?
All right. Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So, we've had some interesting experiences with the sustainability campaign that I mentioned, because we've done, let's see, I think 4 years of the sustainability campaign, and some of those years were done pre-COVID, right? So that was a big effort in getting players to specific locations to then meet with local nonprofits and actually do the work. I think the thing that really drove them was, number one, connection to other players. So being able to connect with others in their communities. And then two, of course, the in-game rewards that we had advertised before the campaign started. So we basically said, you know, if 10,000 players go and clean up, then these are the rewards that we'll unlock. If 15,000 players engage, these are the rewards. This last year, we actually had a really interesting experience because we couldn't get people together in the real world. And so what we did instead is we asked individuals to take a specific action that would help support sustainability efforts. That was, you know, really basic stuff like go around your community and clean up trash, or commit to composting, very small actions. And that admittedly was harder. It was harder to get people engaged. And I thought that was really interesting because the individuals were less likely to participate in the campaign than if there was like this bigger event. And, you know, it was the same in-game rewards, same level of in-game rewards. So that's where we had a challenge. And now we're kind of rethinking what that might look like for us in 2022. But we did also launch that avatar shirt item that I showed in the deck. And that one in particular was very popular. Now we just need to tie that to direct action.
Yeah, one of the things I would add to that, when I talked about, you know, what makes games so engaging, sometimes for weeks, months, or years, is the continual feedback loop that my actions are making a difference. Everybody wants to feel like they're making a difference, that their actions matter. And one of the challenges with sustainability impact programs is you act and maybe a tree is planted somewhere, which is great, but there's not an ongoing feedback loop. Like, how did that tree do? How did that change the ecosystem? Where I'm continually engaged and challenged individually and collectively to do more. And so marrying the best practices of what make the virtual environments of the game so powerful to the real world is something that we're very, very passionate about figuring out. It's hard, it's behavior change, but I think it's the feedback loops that are missing with the clear next steps, especially if it's social. The other thing that is also a real interest is, you know, so much of the popular media, whether it's movies, TV, graphic novels, video games, that is future facing is dystopian. And partially because it's more dramatic and it makes for powerful storytelling. And it often can be very powerful as cautionary tales, but it also is a little bit unbalanced right now because it can be overwhelming. And we don't have many collective, aspirational but achievable visions of the future that are really evocative. Now, granted, that's hard to do, but I do believe having those collective visions and then seeing the steps that vision is being realized, I think is an interesting mix that is also something that we're exploring from a world building perspective.
Great. Yes, definitely a lot of environmental games do tend to thrust us into a dystopian landscape. And that fear mechanic is one way to perform the communication, but more of a positive light is where definitely you've taken your game, which I appreciate. We have a couple more questions, and I'm going to try to synthesize them because they're in a similar vein and we are coming up close to time. And that is around the idea of collaborating with research or collaborating with content experts within the space. So when you're working with either researchers, in the case of Alan, you mentioned a lot of researchers that you've worked with. And then Yenny, you've also collaborated with the National Park Foundation. What is it that you have to balance and consider? How do you translate some of their needs and desires and their research into the game space? And Alan, do you mind kicking that off?
Sure. You know, as I mentioned, I see my job as, I am so fortunate that I get to spend time with these researchers because they're remarkable. And, you know, if you can go down in a sub with one of these researchers, it will change your life. And so our goal is to have every player feel like they're getting that experience. So, I mean, it's important to find researchers who are excited about the medium of games, because the best partnerships we have are when the researchers describe something amazing, like what is the Rosetta Stone to be able to communicate with sperm whales in terms of understanding how to have a dialogue with them, which I'm telling you is not that far off. We take something amazing like that, and then we have to abstract it into a gameplay. And in that process, a lot of questions come up. Is this faithful to the science? Is this not? Is this realistic? Where could this go? And we need research partners who are super excited to have that creative conversation. What we've learned is, we will abstract it in the game, which is why we do these short documentaries so that you can see the real world science and what we've done. And we think that balance is really interesting. But I would say finding, game makers who are super excited to spend time with the researchers and finding researchers who are super excited to engage with the craziness that is game development, then you're off and running.
Yeah, I'd second what Alan says. I think identifying that passion in specific individuals really makes things a lot easier. We do work with the National Park Foundation, and then we also work with some universities, thinking about ways in which AR games might impact things like community building. So for example, we've worked with the University of Washington. They have a really interesting games lab there. USC as well. And they are the ones that, have a lot of interesting conversations with players, and they often are players themselves. So we've had them come to like the Geek Fest, Pokemon Go Fest, right? Which admittedly I love and go to as well. And really kind of merge the two worlds so that we can have a better, more holistic understanding of the various impacts, and really honestly spend a lot of time listening to the researchers and having dialogue in which we are learning quite a bit from them.
Yeah, I would second that listening component as being very critical to this sort of work. And as you mentioned, Alan and Yenny, it's not a clear cut, there's no recipe for it. But especially with our work with the plastic pipeline, one of the things that we're doing is we're collaborating directly with experts who are working in the field. And part of it is really trying to not translate necessarily, but listen very carefully to what the learning goals and the impact and what they want players to walk away with, and figuring out how the best way to pair that with both the mechanics of the game, but also the content of the game, and reviewing the game to make sure that it's very comfortable with how we're portraying data. I want to recognize that we are about 4 minutes from the end of time, and I don't see any more burgeoning questions from the chat. So I want to take this opportunity to give the speakers one last 30-second thoughts, if you have them, and or any sort of last, like where people can find you after this, if they'd like to connect.
Do you want to go
I'll
first?
go ahead. Yeah, so I would just leave this meeting saying that serious games can be fun, and fun games can be serious. And there is a little bit of a push and pull there, an interesting way to use gameplay dynamics to encourage people to think more broadly about the world around them, whether that's in an immersive ocean learning environment like Beyond Blue, or if it's an AR game that's played outside, kind of with a phone in your pocket. So that's something that we are really passionate about. And I love to hear from people. So you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can just email me. It's my first name, yenny@nianticlabs.com.
Yeah, it's just to build on that. I mean, I do think this is the most powerful entertainment medium. I mean, it's interesting to go back to the original Woodrow Wilson paper. We have a corporation for public broadcasting, but not a corporation for public gaming. So I do think video games in the public interest is a largely untapped and very powerful area. That said, it's not easy. And you asked about the development process of game developers working with researchers. There's a whole nother side of this, which is the distribution and publishing. And as I mentioned, like, how do you really rise above the noise if you're competing for discretionary time in the consumer space? How do you replace time or money in an after-school program or a class? That's as much craft as the development side, and it's often overlooked. Now, if you partner with folks like Niantic or some of the we're also a Playing for the Planet partner that have hundreds of millions of gamers, whether it's a Minecraft or Roblox or a social, that's a great opportunity because there's already an installed base. If you want to build that installed base, that's a different set of risk profile challenges. So thinking about the development and the publishing side of it, the right partnerships is all part of maximizing whatever the public interest goal is.
Perfect. And if they would like to play your game, Alan, where might they be able to find it?
Right now, Beyond Blue it's an Apple Arcade title. So if you're subscribed to Apple Arcade, you get it for free. It's on all the different Apple mobile devices. It's on PlayStation, it's on Xbox, and we just released a Nintendo Switch version, and we're working on a VR version right now.
Perfect.
And you can also find me on LinkedIn, and it's my initials at elimedia.com.
Thank you so much. And thank you to both of you so much for joining us today and letting us pick your brains around environmental games. And thank you to everyone who was watching us today and who was watching the video in the future. So thank you so much and have a happy holiday.
Thank you.